Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into something absolutely fascinating today, the King's Hidden Gold Test. It's essentially this brilliant, ancient psychological experiment that's been cleverly disguised as a classic fable. So, let me ask you something right off the bat. How do you react when a massive obstacle drops right in the middle of your path? I mean, really think about it. Do you get frustrated? Maybe look for a quick detour around it? Keep your honest answer in the back of your mind as we dive into this story. Okay, let's set the scene here. Our source describes this very deliberate, almost mischievous setup. One morning, a wise and powerful king decides he wants to run a little undercover test on his subjects. And what does he do? Well, he actually does some heavy manual labor. He takes this huge stone and drops it smack in the middle of a highly trafficked road. No warning signs, no town crier announcing it, nothing. Then, the king literally goes and hides in the bushes nearby, kind of like a medieval spy, just to watch the drama unfold. He's artificially created a problem just to see who, if anyone, is going to step up with a real solution. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds throughout the day. So the morning starts with the king setting his trap, right? By midday, the road is seeing its usual heavy traffic. We're talking wealthy merchants, soldiers, and they all encounter this stone and just completely bypass it. It isn't until much later in the day that the whole dynamic shifts, when a poor farmer finally arrives at the scene. It's kind of a slow burn of an experiment, watching person after person just completely fail the test for hours on end. Now, let's look closer at that first group to encounter the stone. These were folks with high status and capability. We're talking wealthy merchants, soldiers, and various travelers passing by. And this is a really important detail because the merchants, they have resources. The soldiers, they definitely have the physical strength and the authority. Actually, scratch that. There's a serious irony in heavily armored soldiers being too weak, or maybe just too lazy, to move a rock, right? But since this was a busy, main road, there was absolutely no shortage of very capable hands walking right up to this roadblock. But look at how they actually reacted. Our text explicitly notes their behavior, and it is pretty telling. First, they complained about the stone. Then, they loudly blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear. And finally, they just walked completely around it. It brilliantly illustrates this passive, evasive psychology of the crowd. Despite their wealth, despite their literal muscle, absolutely no one attempted to solve the actual problem. They fully expected someone else, specifically the authorities, to fix it for them. They just took the path of least resistance. Then the narrative focus shifts entirely. It's late in the day and a poor farmer comes along. Now, unlike the wealthy merchants or those unburdened travelers, this farmer is already starting at a major disadvantage. The text specifically points out that he's carrying a massive, heavy basket of vegetables. So picture this. He's exhausted, it's late, he's physically burdened, and he is arguably the person with the absolute least amount of societal power or responsibility to clear a public road. So we have these two completely contrasting mindsets side by side. On one hand, you've got the wealthy merchants pointing fingers, complaining, and just avoiding the issue altogether. On the other hand, you have a poor farmer who actually sets down his own heavy basket to engage directly with the problem. He literally puts his own journey on pause to deal with the friction right in front of him. It really makes you wonder, which side of this comparison do you usually fall on when you're inconvenienced? It's a pretty stark mirror to hold up to ourselves, isn't it? And I want to be clear here, this wasn't some kind of magic trick. It was a deliberate, grueling process. Step 1, he carefully set down his burden. Step 2, he pushed against the giant stone with all his strength. And step 3 is absolutely critical here. The source specifically notes that it took several attempts before he finally rolled that heavy stone aside. He didn't just give it one half-hearted shove and say, "Well, I tried, no way." He persisted through the physical friction until the road was totally clear. Now just imagine the scene for a second. The farmer is totally out of breath, his hands are probably scraped up and raw, and he's just pushed this massive boulder out of the dirt. He looks back at the cleared spot where the stone had been sitting all day long, and right there, sitting in the depression left by the rock, is something completely unexpected. The obstacle was actually hiding a secret. To his absolute shock, he finds a small bag lying underneath. And inside this bag, gold coins. We aren't talking just a few leftover coppers here, but gold. This is a literal treasure trove for a poor farmer. And right alongside the gold is a personal note from the king himself. In a matter of seconds, what appeared to be just this frustrating, exhausting roadblock was instantly transformed into a life-changing reward.
That note from the king, it made his intentions crystal clear. It read, "This reward belongs to the person who removes obstacles instead of complaining about them." So the crucial point here is that this wasn't just random luck. Not at all. This was the core design of the king's hidden gold test all along. The gold was intentionally placed there as direct compensation for the exact amount of effort required to improve the situation, rather than just complaining about it. The story resolves with this really beautiful image. The farmer smiles, picks his heavy basket of vegetables right back up, and continues on his journey. But as the text tells us, he's continuing on richer, not only in gold, but also in wisdom. He carries the physical reward, sure, but he also carries a new, profound understanding of how the world actually works when you step up and choose to take ownership of the problems in front of you. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this fable completely redefines a word we use every single day. Normally, we think of an obstacle as a negative thing, right? A blockage, a delay, just a massive nuisance. But the king's test completely redefines an obstacle as a hidden opportunity purposefully created for those who are willing to take action. The barrier isn't actually keeping you from the reward. The barrier is the wrapper that the reward comes in. And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway, explicitly laid out by the source material. Those who take action instead of complaining create opportunities for themselves. Think about it. Complaining about the king, pointing out how unfair the stone was, or skillfully navigating around the problem yielded absolutely zero value for those merchants and soldiers. It was only the raw, persistent effort applied directly to the problem that unlocked the hidden value. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. Think about your work, your personal life, or those big goals you have right now. What stone are you just walking around today? What problem have you been complaining about that, if you just set down your basket and push through the friction, might be hiding your next great opportunity? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I challenge you to go find your stone today and start pushing.